EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to the JAKIB Pregame Show here, a Week 10 edition of the Pregame Show. Eagles getting ready to take on the division rival Dallas Cowboys here, 4:25 kickoff today. Joined now by Dan Sileo and John McMullen. I'm your host, Zander Krause. Johnny Mac, I'm going to start with you, man. The inactives just came out. Let's prepare the listeners for who will be out today on the inactive list. I believe both teams put their inactives out. Johnny Mac, what do you see on the inactive list?
Yeah, for the Eagles, it's as good as possible. I mean, all 53 guys on the current roster are available, so no surprises. Dallas Goedert's back. Even Ben Van Sumeren gets through the concussion protocol in 1 week's time, which I believe is the first time an Eagle's been able to do that this year, off the top of my head. But Tanner McKee, the emergency quarterback, Eli Ricks, Tristan McCullum, Darian Kennard, Trevor Keegan. So I guess, Tristan McCullum before Sidney Brown came back was a big part of the special teams group, but Sidney Brown has stepped into that in the backup safety role. So no real surprises there. For the Cowboys, they still haven't made the move on Dak Prescott yet on injured reserve. Lord knows what this organization does. I mean, now the talk is he's done for the season. He's going to have surgery, but they still haven't placed him on IR, so he's inactive. Deron Bland's inactive, which is obviously big. They were hoping to get him back early in the week, but he didn't practice, so that shouldn't be a surprise. 10-1. Jonathan Mingo, the wide receiver they just acquired, is inactive, so that's not going to be meaningful. Probably the biggest one, Tyler Guyton, is inactive as well. So, yeah, they got a lot of problems. Also, Wanye Thomas, Deuce Vaughn, KJ Henry, not as important to what the Cowboys typically are. The one good piece of news for the Cowboys is that Micah Parsons is going to be back. So I don't know if he could win it by himself, but he might have to.
Yeah, between him and CeeDee Lamb. Big Sills, you'll hear the inactive list today. Obviously, a lot of anticipation always on an Eagles-Cowboy week. Not quite there this week, but that doesn't mean you go into the game asleep. How do you see in this game as we prepare just an hour and 20 from kickoff, Big Sills?
Ask yourself this with both these football teams. Where's Dallas going? I mean, they're caught like in that middle now. Are they going to tank for the April draft? Are they going to go and win? Like John said just now when it came to Dak, they're not even sure what they're going to do with this guy. Why wouldn't you have put that guy on injured reserve now? And by the way, what are you playing for? When you look at that team, they are John, going back to Jimmy's first year and I was there, I have never seen a Cowboy defense so bad right now when it comes to playing the run, defending the pass rushing, everything, a depth level. I mean, they have no running game. Two things in this league that you have to do since 1920. You have to be able to run the football. You have to be able to defend it. And the Cowboys are one of the worst teams in the National Football League at doing both of these things. I just think, again, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you're not playing the Cowboys today. You're playing yourself. Are you going to play up to the ability that you have and that you are showing over these last 4 weeks since the bye? Or are you going to crawl down and play down to the Cowboy level? Remember, it's a short work week, and it's kind of one of those funny things where you got something on Thursday where you got a really big divisional game that will determine potentially the NFC East, and also how you're going to see playoff seeding, because now we're starting to get to the second end of the season now and to the last two quarter polls of the season on how we're going to look at where the playoffs are right now. Washington's in a tough one right now. Let me tell you something. When you play the Pittsburgh Steelers, you are going to be banged up in that football game for that Thursday night. The thing that I worry about with this game is, are they going to, like we talked a little bit on Friday about it, Zander? I mean, you want to try to rest players. You want to try to not have to play 4 quarters of football. But this is the NFL. You mentioned it. Point differential in this league is 3 points. It's going to be an interesting ball game on how Philly takes care of business or if they don't take care of business.
No doubt about it. I want to thank everybody for being here this afternoon, getting ready for the 425 kickoff. Appreciate everybody in the chat box. Appreciate those watching on all of our other social media platforms. Johnny Mack, let's talk Cooper Rush. Dak Prescott obviously out for this game. Eagles played against Cooper Rush as recent as 2022, where they picked him off 3 times in that game. What do you expect from the Cowboys offense in this game without Dak Prescott? It's CeeDee Lamb versus everybody kind of in this game, and Cooper Rush is the one who's got to get him the ball. What do you think of the Dallas coming into this game?
Yeah, typically when you go to your backup quarterback, and Cooper Rush is a very good sort of game manager. Kellen Moore talked him up. That's the last time he played when Dak Prescott was hurt in the 2022 season for a little bit. And Kellen Moore was still the offensive coordinator there, had to start 5 games. He won 4 of them. The only one he lost was to the Eagles, and he turned it over 3 times. So that's how you have to play. You have to be ahead of the sticks. You have to manage the game. You have to shorten the game, sort of the old school mentality of football. And when you can't run the football, as Dan mentioned, it's hard to stay ahead of the sticks. It's hard to get in third and manageable. So the fact that they're not capable of doing that makes it that much harder on Cooper Rush, because this is not a guy who's just going to do it by himself. He's got to be able to do some different things and put in good positions. And if he does that, he's going to make good decisions and he's going to surprise some people. But how do you get to be in those situations where you can make good decisions? Well, you can't be in 3rd and 13. That's when things get pretty hairy for you as a quarterback, and that's when bad things start to happen. So on paper, it looks really difficult for the Dallas Cowboys in this game. But you see it all the time in this league, playing down the competition. The Eagles haven't won down there since 2017. They've lost by an average of over 16 points a game, almost 17 points a game, which if you think about that, that's a disaster. But that's a different Cowboy team. That's a different Cowboy team that won 12 games. That's not this Cowboys team. So, yeah, it on paper, it doesn't look good against for the Dallas Cowboys in this particular game. If you look at some of the early stuff around the league, there's some games you say New England's beating Chicago. Well, why are they doing that? Chicago's doing a bunch of different things. Jacksonville's beating Minnesota. I think Sam Darnold's got 3 interceptions inside the red zone, so he's turning back to Sam Darnold. That's the kind of stuff you have to do to lose a game when you're the better team, when you're the significantly better team. Jalen Hurts hasn't turned the football over in 4 weeks. I can't figure out. I don't think he's going to turn it over 3 times in the red zone. So all the Eagles have to do is bring their C+ game. I wouldn't even say typically you got to bring your A game to win. The C+ should get it done, and don't turn the football over should get it done, to be honest.
Big Cells, how you see it with Cooper Rush leading that Cowboys offense today?
Now, remember the last time they played, that game was relatively close. It was like 2016 for a little bit. And then, if I'm not mistaken, the Eagles ended up pulling away late. That was a different ball team, though. They were better running the football. They were better against the run. They had better talented football guys on that team. And as John said, this team here, this Cowboy team, they're limited in the offensive line. You're starting to see the right guard now, not really the same guy that he once was. I mean, he's been banged up in and out of the lineup as well. But like John said, too, this is a football league that, hey, man, you can't take anything for granted. Look what they did a couple of years ago back in 2017 when you won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. And, you're looking at Nick Foles, you go in there and you beat 2 GOATs in there, too. I'm not putting Cooper Rush on the same level as, say, a Nick Foles, because Nick, again, had the pedigree of being 26-2 that one year that he was a Pro Bowler. But, Kellen Moore said it at the press conference that John was at. He said it. He goes, very capable, smart guy, knows where to go with the football, spreads the ball around. And you even heard Vic say it, too, in the presser that, he was like, I don't think you're really going to see anything different. Again, this guy's capable of moving the chains. Is he capable of winning games like this? I just don't think they got enough talent on that football team. I'm with John. I'm struggling to try to do this, give them the benefit of anything here, and I can't give them the benefit. The one thing that we missed, or the one thing I think we got kind of understood last week with the Jags a bit, was they did have Trevor Lawrence. They had a confident quarterback where you went, hey, guess what? A couple things here, missed first downs, maybe some missed calls, some missed opportunities. That guy could maybe get you back in a game. Even the coaching, you're looking at the coaching of Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer has been a complete downgrade from what they had with Dan Quinn. Who would have thought this too, John? If you're the Dallas Cowboys and you're sitting there looking at potentially Mike McCarthy, so you let Kellen Moore out the building, who has now got one of the top offenses in the National Football League, and now you got a guy who's one of the leading candidates for Coach of the Year in Dan Quinn, with a 7-2 team that just took the lead on the Steelers and is now leading the NFC East. You had two dudes in the building, and because you think you know how to run that football team from the owner's box / GM's box, you had two guys in the building you just let walk out the building. And again, I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt, and I just don't see it.
Well, you're right. They had, one of the best offensive coordinators, one of the best defensive coordinators, and they didn't let Dan Quinn out the building. Obviously, he got a head coaching job. So, you're going to do that. There's not a lot of guys that are going to pass up on head coaching jobs, especially at Dan's age and the second chance. Occasionally you get a Ben Johnson who wants $15 million and passes up on a coaching opportunity with a really bad team in Carolina. So, I'm not going to say 100%.
This price is going up, John. Ben Johnson.
It probably is. I'm not going to blame him for losing Dan Quinn. Now, Kellen Moore, you can blame him for a little bit, but I'll say this. That's what the NFL has become, and I argue about it all the time. They're winning 12 games every year, but then they falter in the playoffs. They don't meet the expectations, so you have to change. Everybody says you have to change. Well, you don't have to change, really. If you show the patience and continuity of the Pittsburgh Steelers or an organization, even Pittsburgh, with Matt Canada occasionally when it comes to the coordinator level, it's really hard to stay disciplined when you don't reach expectations. And we've seen it here in Philadelphia numerous times. Really hard, almost impossible. So, would they go back and revisit the Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy situation? Mike had to do something or he was going to lose his job. So you got to scapegoat somebody, and he scapegoated Kellen Moore. The Zimmer thing is interesting because he was one of the guys. I talk about this all the time. At one point, he was one of the guys everybody copied, with the double A gap stuff and the mug in the A gap. Everybody copied it off Mike Zimmer. And they catch up to it. I talk about this all the time, whether it's cover 2, Tony Dungy, whether it's Zimmer, whether it's the Legion of Boom, cover 3. And now it seems that they caught up a little bit to Vic Fangio, and he's making some different changes. It happens all the time, and he hasn't, adjusted back like Vic has been able to do here. And their defense has been a disaster. The only thing I would dispute is they didn't kick Dan Quinn out of the building. That's just got a head coach.
If they were going to make the call on whether or not Mike McCarthy was your guy, wouldn't you have interviewed that opportunity? Wouldn't you have thought that opportunity? Because I would say he's out at the end of this year. And if you didn't give him
now he is.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a contract. They let him go in as a coach this year without a contract. If you were going to let a guy go in there,
they don't do business like the way everybody else. In a regular city, I would agree with you. You don't let the two cardinal sins are you don't let a head coach or a quarterback go into a lame duck season because if things do start to go off the rails, it's too easy to check out when, the rest of the players know, well, this guy's not going to be here next year anyway. And that's what's happening in Dallas. But, 12-5, 12-5, 12-5. I'm not going to fire the guy. I guess you could, again, but
He in Philly on that same guy though, John. It's been the 3 straight playoffs too, man. I mean, you hear people in the media, including a knucklehead like me and everyone else parking going, hey, what's this guy doing? I mean, and he's been to 3 straight playoffs. He's 40-19. And you got people in the media screaming, going, this guy's a knucklehead here. I mean.
Well, yeah, and I yell at those people. I mean, it's absurd.
You do it right here on the postgame show, Johnny Mac.
It's absurd that people talk about it. And you're going to hear it this year if they don't win the Super Bowl. And we'll see.
John, you'll hear it Monday if this thing's close.
Yeah, you'll probably hear it Monday. Well, you heard Dan Orlovsky say he was going to be fired if they lost to Jacksonville, which is, no, he wasn't. It would have been a really difficult Monday. Don't get me wrong. It would have been a really bad week for Nick Sirianni. He wasn't getting fired. I don't even know what to say to people like that. But yeah, I mean, look, you're going to have the same mindset with Kellen Moore that, let's say the Eagles make the playoffs, win the first round, lose divisional round, and then Kellen Moore, people start sniffing around Kellen Moore for head coaching jobs. You're going to have this whole contingent of people saying they should fire Sirianni and elevate Kellen Moore to be a head coach. The Eagles aren't going to do that. They're not going to do that. If they want to fire the guy, they'll fire the guy. But it'll be for different reasons, like not going for it on 4th down, because they'll get pissed off about that. It'll be for different reasons than people think.
Oh, God, you got to be kidding me. Guys, is it a Saquon Barkley day? Let me give you some stats here on this game coming into this thing. Eagles right now are 2nd in the league in rushing, and Dallas is ranked 30th in the league at stopping the run, allowing almost 150 yards per game. I mean, it doesn't take a smart guy to look at this and be like, boy, the Eagles might run all over this team today. Is it as simple as that, Big Sills? Run all over this football team and blow them off the turf?
You know how to end a team. And you ever drive in your car and you're driving down the street and you see like a wounded animal and you don't want that wounded animal to get up off the ground and come back and bite you? You run them back over again. You don't let anybody up off the turf here, man. Run them over. Run them over. Put them out of their misery. Don't let them hang in there. I don't want anybody coming back and biting me in the ass. So you know how you take the starch out of the team? Don't start throwing the ball around there. Don't start giving them opportunities where potentially, as John would say, players not performing, dropping the ball, what have you. Run the rock and take their pride away from them and put it away. That's how you beat teams up in the NFL when you have the mentality. I'll tell you one thing I love with Lane and even Jalen saying, they're getting back to that football in 22. And I will tell you as a defensive lineman, hey, man, I want to see teams throw the ball. You know why? It gives me a chance to get possessions back if I get 3 and outs on you. But when you're running the ball for 270 yards, that's like having one hand tied behind your back and you can't do anything about it when a team can run you over for 6 yards a carry. Zander, it's not just that he's performing the way and overperforming on what I thought he was going to do. This dude, every time he touches the ball, he's averaging 6 yards a carry. That means this, they're not even getting a hold of him until 4 yards into the line of scrimmage. Do you know they're knocking people off the ball? This, John, is the greatest factory of offensive linemen I have ever seen in pro football history. I have never in my life seen an organization. And you have to remember something, Zander. Back in my time, the Eagles had horrible O-linemen. They were not good players during the Norman Brayman era. There was some David Alexander, Ron Heller, those guys were decent. Nothing like this here, though, man. Now it's a factory. It's incredible on what Howard Mudd and then Jeff Stoutland taking the baton and just being able to run the ball the way they do. John, it's really amazing. I know organizations that don't have 1 or 2 O-linemen These people have 5 or 6 in your deep. Trevor Keegan's in the waiting. What to do with McBecton after that? Run the damn rock, man. That's what you do best.
So, before I get to John here, we giving away a Saquon jersey this week, number 5 on the year?
Boy, I'll tell you what, man. How did the Dallas Cowboys all 4 front 4 guys are going to have one hand tied behind their back, including John's boy, Micah Parsons. They're going to run that guy over this week.
John, what do you think? Running game and the stats coming into this thing. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I look, I think the Eagles are at the point where they were on, 2022. The running stuff reverts back to 2021 as Lane, brought up the Detroit game that year. That's when it all started. I believe they had 6 or 7 consecutive games where they had 175 or more rushing yards. So they've been the best running team in the NFL for a long time, which basically it amazes me that people don't recognize that. But, the longer term goals, you have to be able to do both. And that's where the Eagles think they are. And then it comes down to, and Nick has said this a million times, and he'll probably say it a million more. It's like me talking about results. No matter how many times I say it, it's never going to resonate. He said it again this week. If we have to run it 40 times, we're going to run it 40 times. If we have to throw it 40 times, we're going to throw it 40 times. So then, and by the way, that's what everyone should love that, to be honest, because, they're one of the few teams that can beat you in multiple ways. And so it kind of depends. But if you look at Dallas, yes, in theory, they're really bad at stopping the run on paper, and they're not quite as bad at stopping the pass, although they're not good at that without Bland and, Trayvon Diggs banged up as well. So, it sort of comes down to it, but, what the Cowboys, what certainly sticks out is that they're 31st in the NFL when it comes to running the football themselves, and they're 30th when it comes to defending the run. So they don't do either very easy. And if you do, picture the nightmare of Micah Parsons with strip sacks and this and that, that's generally going to be in the passing game. Now, the one thing, boy, Saquon's getting a lot of freaking touches, man.
27 last week, John.
So I know, but you really want to give him the football, or just give him the football 30 times every week.
No way.
I don't know when it's coming, but it's coming.
Yeah.
And it might not even be. I always go back to Miles Sanders, and Miles unfortunately got hurt today over in Germany. So I hope he's doing well. But I'm not comparing the players, but Miles had a tremendous 2022 season.
1,300 yards. And
I think people forget he got hurt late in the season, and he was playing through a knee injury. It's not the Super Bowl injury, which was a hand injury. He was playing through a knee injury, and he wasn't as effective down the stretch. Sometimes you're healthy. We've seen this with Jalen Hurts, but playing through injuries, and he might have an ankle injury this week.
Hey, John, was that you that chuckled when Nick said it was an ankle injury? Was that you? Because I heard guys chuckling when he went, "Oh yeah, we arrested him because
I'm sure I was in the chuckle brigade. I think with a bunch of us.
It sounded like you.
I heard Bob Lane parachute in, going, "No, it's rest. It's rest." I'm like, it's
Well, come on. I
we didn't talk about that on the show. Well, what the hell happened there, John?
Basically what happened is the Eagles had like 13 people on their injury list this week, which is ironic because they're all playing, they're all healthy, they're all ready to go. Well, they're all healthy enough to play. But on Wednesday, when they did a walkthrough, so it was an estimation, they had it listed as Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley were the 2 players they listed as rest, with no injury designation. So, for instance, Cam Jurgens had a wrist injury and was limited, and then he was back the next day. No story. He's playing. He's a starting center, blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Nick probably doesn't even look at the injury report because he gets the reports from, the medical staff and all that. And Jalen Hurts is dealing with some soreness, as it was described to me, in his ankle. So why the Eagles didn't put it down as an ankle, I don't know. There's a thought process of, and a lot of times in the past, Jalen Hurts doesn't like to let the opponent know he's dealing with somebody before the game. It could have been that. It could have been something as simple as that. Their party line is sort of, it's on. He didn't miss the practice because of the ankle. He missed it because of rest.
Semantics, John.
Exactly.
Semantics.
So, my whole point, if you put him down as an ankle and he's limited on Wednesday, it's a story for, a couple hours. And then he's back at practice, full practice on Thursday, full practice on Friday. It goes away. It goes completely away. So this is an unforced error by the Eagles. And by the way, Saquon Barkley's dealing with a leg injury. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but he admitted he was dealing with it. And directed towards the leapfrog play. That's when he got banged up a little bit. Why they did that, I don't know. But it didn't look good for the organization.
Hey, John, are you more concerned that Jalen's on pace for 180 carries or that Barkley's on pace for 335 or both?
Well, the one thing about Jalen that differs, a lot of his are tush pushes, a lot of his are victory formations. Those get piled on. So you go through a whole season. I've talked about this before. They've already run 23 tush pushes, and I can't even tell you. I haven't looked up the victory formations, but right there, that's 23 on Jalen Hurts. So it's a little bit different. I'm more concerned. I'm definitely more concerned with Saquon's touches of the two.
Barkley's never gone over 300 carries. Most he's ever had is 293, and he's on pace for 347 right now.
Well, I Christian McCaffrey returned today, and I find it ironic because Christian McCaffrey averaged 22 touches last season, just under 22 touches last season, and then he's out for half a year. Now, does that mean, Saquon Barkley's going to be out for half of that? No, of course not. Everybody's individual. Everybody's got different stuff. But the point is, when you touch the football that much at the running back position,
matter of time.
You get it's a matter of time, and you get the living, what kicked out of you. You know that, Dan. I mean, and some of these guys, like Saquon's not on the injury report. So I think a lot of people, and this talks to, fans in general, they say, well, if somebody's playing, they must be healthy. Nobody's healthy this time of year. Nobody. So everybody's dealing with something. It's a matter of, if you play a lot, it's a matter of how you persevere through it. And, as Dan just said, it's a matter of time. So I think the Eagles have done a good job. They've done a better job this year than they did in 2022 when they're up in games to get the starters out and get the reserves in. And hopefully that continues. And they're able to get the starters out, and you can save some touches that way and just pile them on Kenny Gainwell and Will Shipley in the fourth quarter. But I'm a little bit concerned with the touches.
John, you think we're giving away a Saquon jersey this week? Number 5 in the year?
Well, he's always a threat because even when he's not having a good game, he's liable to get the 65-yard run that puts you over the top. And if you look at, as I said, Dallas is 30th in the NFL against the rush. He should. He should. This is a game on paper he should go over 125. Boy, that's a big number. He's been making it look small, but that's a big number. And if he doesn't, it might be a situation where he's sitting the whole fourth quarter. and he would have gotten over 125. That type of situation. We had that a couple weeks ago, I think, didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on this one game here, the Steelers and
Yeah, it's a close game
right now.
Yeah.
Boy, I'll tell you, Jaden Daniels, man. I mean, I'm keeping an eye on the corner of my eye here. 13 of 25, 163. I'm telling you, John, that's going to be something to watch on Thursday night. I'm really looking forward to watching that. I don't want to get ahead of us here with this Cowboy game. I mean, Jimmy Johnson would kill me.
It's, I get why people are thinking about it, but I'll say this. Washington's got a much tougher game this week against Pittsburgh on paper. As you said, they're ahead right now, but it's a one-score game. Russell just threw an interception, I think, but it's a tight game. We'll see how it goes the rest of the way. And it's not a long trip for the Commanders, obviously, up to Philadelphia. But it's better to play these Thursday night games at home than on the road. So I think
that's Thursday night. Boo Thursday night.
I hate Thursday night games, but I mean the Eagles are playing the weak opponent coming off. Now they got more significant travel because they have to go to Dallas, come back from Dallas. But I'd rather and Nick said that this week, he'd rather play at home on Thursday night. So no matter what. Yeah.
Both of those teams are good, by the way. We got the Steelers on the schedule too. That defense is no joke. That Steelers defense, they're a pretty good unit over there. So both of those guys.
Washington's got a very demanding game right now because that's what they run the football. And I mean, I want to see how that defense. I mean, do they get tenderized up a little bit by Washington? Washington's offensive line has really been playing a lot better because they've been getting the ball out of Jaden Daniels' hand quicker. Then it's not that they got a great group. This is why you worry about a game like Dallas, because you know what you're doing. Are you peeking? Are you looking up? Or are you keeping your head down knowing that you got that team in front of you here? And that's going to be something to watch this week here to see what happens today with this Dallas team. Because, again, everyone knows that Thursday game is going to be for the lead. And maybe, think about it, John, if things fall right, maybe falls in line here when you got Detroit up there with that record of 7-1. You want to stay in arm's reach of that here. So you want to hang there around at that 2-loss number right now because you're going to be fighting potentially here for home field advantage. And you can't drop one of these two games here because Detroit looks awful good. They're doing it by running the ball.
They do.
How about this, John? Both their guys. One of their guys, the kid they got from Bama, is on pace for 1,500 yards. The other guy, David Montgomery, is on pace for 1,200 yards. They run the ball just as good as the Philadelphia Eagles do, and their line is right in that conversation with Penei Sewell and those guys. So, I mean, those two teams, they look like they're on a collision course.
You can't come into this game if you're the Eagles, right, and view it like maybe I do, where it's like, can we get the starters to the ground or on the bench? No. You don't, right? You can't come into it.
You can't go in. I don't like the term trap game. I've never liked it. But I do call them human nature games.
Okay.
They're it's peppered into their mindset that you can't take this team for granted. And everybody knows this isn't college. This is the NFL. Everybody's got good players. I talk about it all the time. And the difference between the best team in the NFL and the worst team is generally 5-6 players, maybe at most. And everybody else is it's a parity driven league. It really is. That's why you can turn it around so quickly in this league. So you can't go into it. You can't go into it with that mindset, I would say. But the human nature creeps into it. And they know Washington's coming up. They know what Washington is. Washington is what Dallas typically is. We thought it would be the opposite, and this would be the big game. And, Washington is sort of the gimme. Well, it's turned out to be the exact opposite.
Right.
And some of that creeps in. It might not be everybody. Some players are better at it than others, I would say. But it's got to creep in it. And Dan could speak about this. I mean, it's got to creep into your mindset as a player. And at least that human nature oh, I can take a breath this week, maybe then, I gotta be on my A game at all times.
John,
It is human nature.
Hey, John, let me give you my first year. We went up to Green Bay and we were playing the Bears the following week, and this was my first year. And I came out of college, and I'm like, I got 5 wins. I mean, how good could Green Bay be? And I realized right then and there that in this league, the difference between a team back then when they played 16 games, the difference between a 6-10 team and a 10-6 team is 25 plays in a game. That's the only difference that you have between those two. The good teams make those 25 plays. The bad teams will have a 25 plays in there where it costs them a game. But my point is the talent level at that league, man, you're plays away from being 10-6 versus a 6-10 team. This is not one of those leagues. Like he said, hey, my college, they bid it this past weekend by taking a team for granted. That happens in college when you got younger players with mindsets. You drop a game to Tech. When you go up and you play Green Bay, you have that attitude, you'll get run off the field. Just like we saw a couple weeks ago when Cleveland beat the Baltimore Ravens. Hey, man, don't have any kind of mindset like that because you will be beat because this league, hey, the parity, I call it, or the league likes to call it parity. Sometimes I call it mediocre football. But the parity in this league, I'm telling you, it's spread out. Very few teams, and I'll say this to you too. I don't believe there's a team in the league this year that's a dominant football team. I think there's a dominant coach team with a dominant quarterback that's in Kansas City. But to sit there and say that there's a dominant force team like we've seen in the past.
Detroit's making the case. So
yeah, I would argue Detroit has been the most dominant team.
But here's the thing, though, John, with Detroit. Okay, true. But when has Detroit ever been in this situation, ever been in this spotlight where they are a team that could go in and week out and know how to win? They're learning how to win. Kansas City knows how to be a champion.
Well, I agree with that, but that was, to me, that was part of last year with Detroit winning, getting to the level that they did.
NFC title game, right?
You almost have to get to that level before you can take the next step. Look, they have a tough game tonight. They're playing at Houston, and Houston's had some bad games, but if they play well, Houston can be very competitive. So that my mindset there might shift if they play poorly tonight. I don't expect it. I think they're the best team in football by a pretty significant margin. But I get it why also everybody defaults to Kansas City because, they've done what they've done. But right now, I mean, they're playing Denver right now. It's not a very good football team. They're okay. They're average, but, they're struggling with them. And there's something to the finding ways to win standpoint. Style points aren't getting you anything extra. But Detroit's got a hell of a lot more style points than Kansas City. I'll say that. But they have more style points than everybody this year, by far, I would say.
No doubt. Eagles getting some key guys back today, guys. Darius Slay will return. Dallas Goedert returns. A.J. Brown, who went down in the Jags game, will play today. So everybody's back. Big Sills, do you think they get Dallas Goedert involved in this game? They've been going to Calcaterra. Me and you talked about it a little bit on the show. It almost felt like Jalen was more comfortable going to Calcaterra than Goedert. You think they get him involved in today's game?
I'd like to stress those backers that the Cowboys don't have. I mean, dude, Dallas Goedert, and you've heard Kellen Moore say this, John, sitting in the pit with those guys when he's talking about this. The tight end position in the NFL today has become one of the most unique positions in the league. Why? Because the underthought position room of the linebackers, it's such a mismatch today, athletic-wise. I mean, Dallas has a pretty good kid in Ferguson. That guy's a good football player, man. I mean, is he an elite guy? No, but you know what he does do? He became Dak Prescott's second go-to guy, and that guy has turned out to be a pretty damn good football player. So the mismatches that you have at the tight end position, I mean, no question about it. My problem with Dallas Goedert, get this, I know this is going to sound crazy. Man, every year there's significant time lost with him. How are you building a game plan around a guy for the last 5 or 6 years that has lost significant time? I looked it up. He's missed 21% of his career the last 5 years due to injuries. I mean, how do you build a game plan around that, Zander, when you're trying to get him involved? And can you trust him being there when it matters the most? I mean, is he a fine ball player? Absolutely. Does he have a nose for the end zone? Absolutely. He's all the things you want except this. Reliable. And I'm talking health-wise. Ankle, and get this, they're really crazy ones. A forearm, an ankle, a hamstring. All those things, it just seems like, again,
a glenoid bone. I'll throw that in. I didn't even know what a glenoid bone was
it's 5 years in a row, John. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, I always look, I'm very careful with that term injury prone because I think a lot of people now he's missed injuries. I would say with the glenoid bone one, if that I believe it was against Washington with the personal foul. So that was some bad luck. You know, it was his sort of own fault, which you mentioned. He used to win that. I think Kyle Brandt has the Angry Run Award. So he liked winning that. He won one. He gets a big, sword for it or whatever they give. And then he's trying to win another one. He's trying to, face mask the defensive back, and he hurt his forearm. Whereas the most recent one was third down on the first drive against Cleveland, and his hamstring just went. They were going to him. He ran the route, and you could see it when it happened. The hamstring. So they've all been a little bit different. But yeah, when it happens year after year after year after year, people are going to say that. People are going to say, to me, soft tissue's more of a bad luck thing. Like you can manage, and Dallas was kind of new after the forearm thing that he had to start managing that and stop trying to run over people. So he kind of understood that. And if he does it again, maybe you can blame him, but he seems to have learned from that. The personal foul, that's kind of a thick move. And what are you going to do? Somebody dumps you on the shoulder and you have a broken glenoid bone. I mean, that's sort of bad luck.
I don't even know. I don't even want to know where that is, John.
It's in the shoulder, but so a lot of it is different and different types of injuries. And this most recent one is soft tissue. But when he's out there, he's effective. And, Jalen trusts him. I think the positive thing about when he was out this time, typically when he'd been out in the past, the Eagles didn't even look at Grant Calcaterra or Jack Stoll. And the tight end was sort of out of the equation when it came to the offense. I think this time, they got Grant Calcaterra involved, and I think that's a positive. That's a big, big positive from the standpoint of now you have two different guys. So always, people talk about the third receiver, and they're not able to get Jahan Dotson involved, although that was a hell of a catch by Jahan against Jacksonville. But, from a traffic wise, they don't give him the football a lot. The fact that it seems like Jalen Hurts has to trust his receivers. I don't necessarily agree with that. Zander, you and I always talk about the Kirk Cousins play earlier this year when Drake London came off the field for one play in overtime. And the kid was open and Kirk Cousins threw him the ball and won the game. He trusted him. He's an NFL player. Next man up, he trusted him. That's probably what you should do, but that's not always what the Eagles have done. And to have another guy you built that trust up with, I think is a positive thing.
We'll see what happens. Guys, I got an over-under. We're going to get our predictions for the game coming up in a little bit. 4:25 kickoff today, everybody. I got an over-under for you guys. Tyler Guyton's out, by the way, the tackle for the rookie.
By the way,
tackle.
he's a turnstile.
He's been a little better. See, Sills, we called him a turnstile on the show on Friday, right? and I got a text from one of my Cowboys friends who must have been listening to the show. And he sends me a link. Guyton's not a turnstile. He's top 8 among the 22 rookie offensive linemen, number 6 of the rookies. I'm like, okay, whatever. Anyway, he's out. Will Bryce Huff get on the board today with over a half a sack and getting a full sack in today's game? Big Sales, I'm starting with you.
Who? Who? I mean, Bryce Huff?
Bryce Hufflepuff.
Give me the other kid. I'll take the other kid because I think the other kid's playing a little better and the other kid's coming along more.
Josh Sweat.
He's not a liability.
Nolan Smith, not Josh. Josh is good.
Yeah, Nolan Smith. I mean, I'm thinking, get this. Here's the one thing that I'm liking when I watch that kid. He's not a liability at setting the edge. He's starting to do a nice job out there. He's going to the wide side of the field. He's rushing the passer. Bryce Huff, when I heard Vic Fangio say one more time, and I heard Nick say this, that an $18 million guy is a rotational piece, and we're talking about wrist, hand, arm, whatever injury it was, that this kid got 6 snaps last week. I got to tell you, man, the workload that he has been asked to do early on. Remember something, he got 480 snaps last year. Just because you get more snaps and people want you to become more of a 3-down or think you can become a 3-down player, look what happened with Josh Sweat last year when he had over 950 snaps. His production went down. Dude, that doesn't – look at what we got with BG. Less snaps, more production. So to me, again, he's still learning the position on setting the edge right now. So half a sack, I mean, this is the day. You're playing against Lehigh. You're not playing the Cowboys.
Whoa.
I mean, let's go here.
Whoa. I'm going to say the Cowboys are better than Lehigh.
You really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, Bryce Huff, he's not involved. Is he ever going to be involved? I don't know. I don't know. They need somebody. They need a 4th edge rusher. Because as you mentioned, Josh Sweat last year, Josh Sweat's a good player. He's not the upper echelon of what people want as far as an edge rusher, a Hassan Reddick.
Could you compare him, John, to Javon Curse? Or do you think Curse was a little better?
Curse was better. But what he is, he's a well-rounded, more of an old school defensive end. He can set the edge, he can play the run. He can rush the passer pretty consistently. He's got 30 pressures, so he gets pretty consistent pressure. He might not be the most, he might not be the best finisher as he should be, considering his size and his frame and his length and all that kind of stuff. But he's a really good player. But the one thing we learned last year is that, he played way too much. And so did Hassan Reddick. Yep. And the whole point of this was, well, you got to get a better rotation involved. And now essentially they scaled it back to 3 players last week because, partially Bryce did hurt his wrist. It's legitimate. He had a big brace on it. But, they didn't give it to Jalix Hunt the extra reps. They could have, maybe they will at some point, but you got to get something from Bryce Huff. And I don't even care if it's sacks or pressures or hurries, but you need reps to take him away. Brandon Graham played 36, 37 reps last week at 36 years old. We talked about, is that sustainable for Saquon Barkley from a touch standpoint? Well, from an edge rusher standpoint, is it sustainable for those guys to play that level of snaps? I don't think it's sustainable if you want the effectiveness you want.
Unbelievable what just happened on the screen.
I know,
the Chiefs
fumbled.
No, well, I didn't even see that. I got the red zone on in front of me. The Chiefs were about to lose their first game of the year on a field goal from like 25 or 30 out. And in Chiefs fashion, they block it, and the Chiefs will get the win. Patrick Mahomes dancing. We got great games happening all over the NFL today. Let's get the predictions in, everybody. We got about 10 minutes left here on the JAKIB Pregame Show. Appreciate everybody watching right now. Hit that like button. If you're in the chat, we appreciate all you guys checking in. Forest Hill, Flexing and Stepping, Andrew, RMP, Philly D, Abe, what's up, Abe? Crowley, good to see you. Crowley and Sydney family, David Mac Perez, good to see everybody in the chat. John, I'm going to come to you first. Keys to the game here. I don't want your prediction just yet. We'll get it at the end, but if you're the Eagles, simplify me. Give me 3 keys to the game, offensively or defensively, to walk out of Jerry's Row with their first win since 2017.
Well, offensively, don't turn it over, period. If you don't turn it over, if you don't shoot yourself in the foot, you're going to win this game. So that's number one. You got to keep that stretch going. And I'm not even saying 0 turnovers. I'm saying just make sure it's not negative 50 like it was with the Jags today, who might pull off a win because of it. And just stay away from that, and you're going to win the football game. Defensively, as I said, you'd like to get the pass rush going a little bit more, but I find it ironic. This was the week that, PFF did their defensive front rankings, and the Eagles are number 2.
Wow.
Number 2 in the entire NFL, but they're not getting it. It's mainly the interior guys. Jalen Carter's playing very well. Milton Williams, I shouldn't say mainly, because Josh Sweat's having a good season. Brandon Graham's having a good season. But, because Bryce Huff hasn't started the way he was supposed to be as a pass rusher, I think everybody looks at that group and says there's something wrong. But overall, the defensive front has been really good. And I would say, stop the run, make Cooper rush, and be in 3rd and longs, because he's not going to be able to make plays in 3rd and longs. And then if I had to pick a third, I would say, get everybody out in the 4th quarter for Washington.
Big Sills, coming to you. Keys to victory here for the Philadelphia Eagles as you see it.
Vic Fangio, bring some pressure on this guy. Let's find out what he's all about again. Let's see what he can do with a lesser team. They've been doing a nice job by bringing pressure. I'll tell you one thing that I think that's been different from Vic, talking to Dave Wannstedt, who had worked with him in Chicago, is the fact that he's starting to bring a little bit more pressure. One thing I'll tell you about Kobe Dean that I'm starting to see, one thing that I like with him, he can rush the passer. And he can get back there when they bring pressure and using him. Because to John's point, the one thing that I will say about the edge rushers, they're not really getting a lot of pressure off the edge outside of Josh Sweat. You're starting to see that pick up a little bit with Nolan, but they're going to need more than just, if you go back to 22, remember what they had. DG was 11 sacks. Sweat was 11 sacks. Reddick was 16 sacks. I mean, now that was a 70-sack season. You're not going to see that. So the pressure, again, on Cooper Rush, I want to see how they perform. I don't believe that Dallas has a number 2 wideout outside of the tight end. They can't run the ball to save their life. So force that guy to beat you. Force that guy to beat you. And if I'm the Eagles, this is going to go to John, and I don't really like agreeing with this part with John on this, but this is situational, and he's right. This is going to be, if Dallas gives up the run the ball 42 times. If Dallas gives up the pass and you're killing them with tight ends and you're killing them with the outside on the numbers, go right ahead, because Dallas doesn't do anything well. They don't defend the pass and they can't defend the run. John, this is going to come down to situational. Whatever Dallas is giving up the most in this game, I know it sounds too simple, but that's the one thing the Eagles have in their bag of tricks, is that they can do both. Like, a lot of teams can't do that, Zander. Okay? The Eagles can do that, especially against this team that's really outmanned.
No doubt about it. Let's get the predictions, everybody. Got 5 minutes left on the post-game show. And before I give you guys a chance, this comment is as true as it gets from our man DRC. One thing about football, it never goes how you think it should go.
No, never.
That's true.
That is the
that
truth.
is true.
Hey, that's why the ball's shaped not like a normal ball. It wobbles differently, man.
Exactly, no doubt. Johnny Mac, coming to you. Prediction for the game. Eagles-Dallas here, Week 10 matchup.
Yeah, I think Dallas is just too up against it, too many injuries. And they're not, they weren't even playing that well when they were healthy. So I don't think they were the team they have been the past 3-4 years. And I think it ends 2017. So 6 straight, the Eagles have lost at AT&T Stadium. The Cowboys were 8-0 last year there until losing in the playoffs. Now they're 0-3. So they've lost 4, make it 5. I don't see any way they could win this game, barring 3 interceptions, strip sack, crazy play. Yeah. That really long odds for the Dallas Cowboys.
What was your score there, Johnny Mac?
I had them 31-16 Eagles.
There you go. Good stuff. Big Sills, coming to you. Prediction for the game today, brother.
I got 38-17. I think they're going to put it on them. I think they're going to run the ball. And like John, I'll even say this to you. If the Eagles turn the ball over 3 times, I still think they're going to put up 30 points on them. Cooper Rush and the Cowboys will have to play an A+ game to hang in this thing. So this is one of the worst Dallas Cowboy teams I've seen since the 1-15 season. And I got 38-17 in this game.
Good stuff there. This is going to be, I think maybe last week was the first one, but this might be the first week the whole JAKIB panel, Big Sills, Johnny Mac, and myself are picking the Birds by 2+ scores. Is that the kiss of death? We will find out. I will take.
Well, it's very rare in the NFL you're picking teams to win by 2+.
I know, and that's
no doubt.
I'm going 31-10 today. I think the Birds win. I don't see how the Cowboys are going to score points. That's why I have them at 10. I just don't see it with them scoring points, and the way the Eagles defense has held up recently. I don't see them scoring points.
How about this one, though, Zander? Big Sills picked the Commanders to win the NFC East, and right now they're up.
They get the win. Is that game over?
It's pretty close to 27-21 Commanders right now. And I said the Cowboys would win 5 ball games this year.
What happened? Steelers fumbled at the goal line?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Well, there's still time. The Steelers are still in that game.
They've got the win over the Buccaneers. So a lot of stuff is starting to shake out in the NFC. You're going to see some teams start to emerge and separate themselves from the pack.
One thing, I'll tell you this right now, we can start early. I'm not picking either team to win by 2 scores next week.
Oh, no.
Me neither. Not in that one, Johnny Mac. No doubt about it. Great show today from John McMullen. Make sure you guys give John a follow at JF McMullen on X, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. 1987 national champion Dan Sileo. Make sure you guys.
We got through that. We got through that one. There we go, John. We got that.
Yeah,
well, we did. Yeah. Good show today.
I learned from my mistakes.
Wait, I'm not sure I do.
Yeah.
Follow Dan at Dan Sileo Show, and give me a follow, everybody, at Real Zander. Zander is with the Z. A lot of people typing in the X. I'm with the Z, everybody. So thanks, everybody.
Every once in a while, that's funny you say that. Every once in a while, I throw up an X for you.
Well, X is actually the correct spelling of Zander based on my name being Alexander. Yeah. My Nana used to get mad at me for that, Johnny Mac. Why with the Z? Why with the Z?
Veterans. Salute our veterans.
Oh, absolutely. Salute to the veterans with Veterans Day coming up. No doubt. Big Sills, thank you for putting that in there. We appreciate it. We have plenty of our viewers are actually veterans. So thank you all for the support on the channel. Good show today, boys. We'll catch you, Johnny Mac, at halftime and on the post-game show. Everybody expect some fireworks. We'll see how the game goes. Thanks, everybody.
EAGLES Eagles.